First, do you believe Tory warnings that Labour would raise taxes? This row is raging on over whether or not Labour would end up costing taxpayers more money. The row really kicked off during the leaders' debate on Tuesday after Sunak repeatedly said Starmer would end up costing families an extra £2,000.
He would put up everyone's taxes by £2,000. £2,000 in higher taxes for every working family in our country. If people are struggling with their bills, why do you want to make it harder for them by saddling them with £2,000 worth of higher taxes? How is that going to make Paula or anyone's life easier? You want to put everyone's taxes up by £2,000, and this is really important. Yeah. Independent Treasury officials have costed Labour's policies, and they amount to a £2,000 tax rise.
Now, the last bit, mentioning independent Treasury officials, turns out wasn't quite true. A chief civil servant from the Treasury poured doubt over the figure as well. Starmer then came out batting for Labour, having actually remained silent for a lot of that debate, as you could see, and accused Starmer of lying. The Tories, though, have now doubled down on their claim, with Sunak himself speaking to ITV's Paul Brand last night.
His permanent secretary at the Treasury said, do not use this to claim that civil servants crunch these numbers.
No, that's not right.
That's the letter that's been published.
I can tell you exactly. I'm happy to go through it with you. There are 27 different policies that go into this number. 21 of them have been costed independently by Treasury officials. They're all online and people can find them.
Will you at least be upfront about the fact that this is based on Conservative advisers putting together the initial input?
No, what the analysis and the working is done by Treasury officials. They are
based on things that Conservative advisers have asked them to look at.
It's all transparent. It's all laid out online.
You're not being transparent now, Prime Minister.
People can go and read it online.
So who do you believe? Let's just go back and look at the context here. Mention tax, and things tend to get a bit stormy and blowy with these two, and rocky, because both of them are, of course, in the situation no one wants to admit we're not collecting enough tax to spend the money we want to spend as a country. Let's look at Starmer, first of all, and look at his policy on tax, what we know of it, and he says, this is the Labour policy, will not raise income tax or national insurance, would keep freeze on income tax thresholds, which has been set to stay until 28. Won't commit to the triple lock plus, which is the Tory guarantee the state pension will never be taxed. Will put VAT on private school fees and, by the way, more taxes on non-doms. You may look at that and you may say, my goodness, that list, it's so boring. In a way, that's intentional. You know, that nobody wants their own tax policy to be interesting. You could probably say the same of the Conservatives. Will not increase income tax or national insurance during next Parliament. Confirmed income tax thresholds remaining frozen until 2028. That's a Jeremy Hunt policy. And then announce this triple lock plus so that you know your state pension is not going to be taxed. OK, bring them both back on and let's look at the £2,000 claim. And as Paul Brand was asking the Prime Minister, it started, didn't it, in the TV debate. And Starmer let it go for a good 20 minutes. But it had emerged before that in a Tory dossier, which put together £38.5 billion of spending they said wasn't accounted for in their tax plans, and they'd simply divided it by the number of households and said that's £2,000 per working household. The problem is we don't have Labour's manifesto yet. And the second thing, as we heard there, is this letter from the Treasury saying, wait, don't say these figures are official because they're not. So you've got the scenario where the fisherman goes to the edge of the dock to catch Labour and falls in the river. That's the sort of what's happened to the Conservatives here. But I think they may well be happy, the Conservatives, that we're talking about tax Labour tax. That's what they want. So here we go. You name it, Labour will tax it. Your work, your car, your pension, you name it, Labour will tax it. Now, if Labour want to say, hang on, those aren't official figures, it's not a very stout defence. Conservatives, the Prime Minister warned this week Keir Starmer would put up taxes on working families by £2,000 to fill Labour's £38.5 billion black hole, and now there's no place for Starmer to hide. So 12 new taxes, that's the same font they used in 1992 where they stole the victory from under Labour's noses. Conservative, another tweet, the truth has now emerged. He's preparing 12 new taxes. So it's escalating now. It's an interesting one, this, Jess, isn't it? That the Conservatives are thinking, OK, we can actually take advantage here.
It's desperate, isn't it? I mean, we look at the tweet there from Conservatives that the Labour will tax your pension, your work, your road tax. That's already taxed. We already pay tax on that. And when we look at the last 14 years, this is what kind of always gets me when we talk about Conservatives. Rishi Sunak, they talk about it like they're not the party who's been in power for the last 14 years. You know, the tax changes over the last 14 years, 63% of them have been tax rises under the Conservative government. So in all of their own policies, they've actually been the ones who are raising taxes. And also, the reality is, we haven't got the money in this country. We're going to have to raise taxes from somewhere to try fill this hole that we've been put in. And a lot of that is due to the current government.
Is that right, Angela?
Well, look, I don't think he's telling lies. I think it was more a case of sharp political practice, because it's fairly well precedented that the Treasury will always analyse the opposition's figures and see what they come up with. And ultimately, what's happened is there is a black hole. The question is, and Jess is right, in terms of how much money there is to spare. We've had COVID, we've had a global cost of living crisis, we've had the instability of war in Ukraine, which has affected food prices. So there's lots of external factors which have put massive thumbscrews on spending. But I think ultimately, I will always trust the Conservatives more on spending and tax rather than I will on Labour. Look at Wales, your neck of the woods, for example. So the Conservatives have committed to introduce, I keep forgetting the name of it, which shows it's not a terribly good name, the Family Home Tax Guarantee, which is the commitment to not mess with council bans, inheritance tax, etc. So that the property that you've worked hard to buy and pay for will be ring-fenced. And,
But how do they... How much right does anyone have to say they won't raise taxes when we are spending, as a country, money like a drunken sailor?
OK, so you have to look at things like encouraging enterprise and growth. The point being that Labour are not saying that they won't do these things, but they've already done it in Wales, and it's been disastrous. And Rachel Reeves said in 2018 that we need to rethink council bans, and now they're saying maybe they're not. The biggest problem we've got with Labour, I mean, you said the manifesto hasn't been printed, is there is no kind of financial integrity. We don't know what they stand for or where they're going or what they're doing.
The basic answer on everything, once you say, look, where is the money coming from for X, Y, Z? In the end, it comes down to growth, that they're going to deliver growth the Conservatives couldn't deliver. And that fundamentally is what they're saying. OK,
so then they'll have huge windfall taxes on all of the energy.
Well, will
that solve the energy crisis? VAT on schools. So what happens? You dump all those kids into the state sector, which is going to cost the state even more. They're myopic. Their tax policies are myopic.
It's got to come from somewhere, though. And that's the thing. I think, we look at Conservative policy, they're looking at taking away some benefits from people, are looking at the lower income households, when actually the reality is that we need to gather tax from somewhere, and it's going to have to come from people who can afford it.
Let's get some calls on. Richard in Essex, hi.
Hi, good morning.
Where's the tax row left you, Richard?
It's left me with just the lies of the Conservative Party. They've been lying when the moment they put Boris Johnson in power. He's always been a liar. And all the Conservative people, now that sit on the government front bench, are all liars.
This is the classic thing where how do you know a politician's lying? Their lips are moving. You think that because they've said £2,000 tax rise under Labour, it's not true?
Well, I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe anything they say. I was a Conservative voter all my life, and till now, I wouldn't vote Conservative again, ever.
Which way are you going in the election? You might even be in Clacton, are you, or not?
No, nowhere near Clacton.
Which way are you going in the election?
I'm not going at all. I'm disabled, so I've got to get there, and so I'm not going to bother.
Not going to vote?
Oh,
no,
postal vote.
Richard, we don't want to lose the voices of people with disabilities in this election. That's really. I hope you get a
vote. Well, I mean, what they're doing to me now is killing me. And no, he's just a liar. I mean, and he disgraced my father, who fought in the Second World War.
What, with this thing yesterday?
Yep. I mean, and to have that, no, I couldn't vote for them again.
OK, Richard, thank you so much. After the break, we're going to see a clip in a second from a Tory MP called Bim. And we got this clip. Let's just have a look at it. So his name is Bim Afalami. He's Economic Secretary to the Treasury. And he's been challenged over this £2,000 figure.
Is that how you set taxes? You just divide it up evenly and everybody pays the same. And it's only working families.
Well, working families are the people who pay the bulk of taxes in this country. Yes, they are.
I'm trying to point out how meaningless this
taxes.
figure is, because that's not the way the tax system works.
Well,
And also
families are-
£2,000 is over 4 years.
Yes, and that the Prime Minister has been very clear about that.
Well, he wasn't, but...
What has happened is that Keir Starmer has been rumbled. He was rumbled last night. They have lots of plans, which are perfectly legitimate in politics, but they have not explained how they're going to pay for them.
Bim Afalami went to Eton. One of his old teachers retweeted the clip and wrote, "Bim, I taught you politics at Eton, but I didn't teach you to be mendacious. You must have discovered that somewhere else. I think you're better than this tawdry approach. I hope the voters in Hitchin make the right call." That's his constituency. Oof. What's that called, a burn?
Yeah, that is a burn.
Derek in Northamptonshire, hi.
Oh, good morning, everybody.
So, Derek, which side are you on? Do you think Sunak is right to throw this £2,000 figure around?
I think it probably is, actually, in my opinion.
Well, someone said if the tax has gone up £14,000 over the last 14 years, going up £2,000 now seems like a bargain.
Well, what I think Labour will go for is raising council tax. They'll do that by raising the 5% cap on council taxes. I mean, when Labour were last in power, council taxes went up dramatically, went into double figures. And I think they're probably thinking that may be a way of raising more tax.
Now, I know you'll know the answers, Derek, and I don't understand it. They always say if you change the council tax banding, you get loads more money because it will start to take account of the way people have renovated their houses. I don't get that. Why not just raise the amount each band pays?
Well, I think that the council tax banding system is deeply flawed anyway and is in urgent need of revision.
Got it. Thank you. Peter in Wolverhampton, hi.
Morning, Jeremy.
So, is Labour going to put taxes up by £2,000 per household?
Well, I think they're going to put it up by more than 2,000. It wouldn't surprise me if they put it up by 4,000.
Well, we've got currently the highest taxes we've had for 70 years. And 70 years ago, we were trying to rebuild after the Second World War. So it's not as if the Conservatives can throw any brickbats on this.
Well, now we're trying to rebuild after all the other wars we've been in. But I think there is always a secret plan in campaigning. You don't tell people in the campaign what you're really going to do. And I remember David Cameron coming on your show in 2010 and saying, "I swear there are no plans to reform disability benefit." And 6 months later, he invented personal independence payment.
But we also had, I think Nick Clegg saying that students will not pay tuition fees and even signing something, in person, and he went back on that. So maybe we shouldn't believe anything, Peter.
Well, I think if somebody said you campaign in poetry and govern in prose, but I think you sort of campaign in lies and govern in truth.
It's so true. Now, that was Mario Cuomo who said that, and that is one of the all-time great lines. Campaign in poetry, govern in prose. Thank you, Peter. Brian in Newport, hi.
Hi.
So, what do you think?
I think before people make minds up, they should look at Wales. I live in Wales. We've got teachers and schools. They're looking at making redundancies. We've got Vaughan Gattin, who sings with the tax and told his parties to delete tax and things like that, yet Starmer is backing him.
I don't know, I can't work out whether Vaughan Gattin is toast or not. He seems to have had a very bad week.
Well, Starmer's behind him, and and if you look at Starmer's eyes on that debate, every time Sunak said something, there was like a shock in his eyes, as if, how did he know that sort of thing?
I think he was more shocked that he was coming out with this figure. I think he was thinking, where's this coming from?
No, he had 12 times.
Even if he was lying, Sunak, even if Sunak was lying, why didn't Starmer have something to say back to him?
I don't think he had a chance to get in there.
He was shaking his head.
Over him quite a lot.
It's possible he couldn't get back in. Thank you, Brian, very much. I do think that although the Conservatives got burnt by giving a figure that they got wrapped on the knuckles for, it suits them down to the ground
100%.
that we're having conversations with two words in, Labour and tax. Jim in Glasgow, this is bad for Labour, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So what? But is it wrong for Sunak to have just basically conjured this figure out of the air?
Everybody's picking on Sunak. As I said, the guy has only been doing been in charge of the government for a year and a half, no 15 years. The man has done more in that year and a half than anybody else who's tried to do it.
What? So Sunak has had a very good couple of years.
Yeah, basically, I would say so. And I'm an SNP. That's who I vote for, SNP.
Right. We don't hear that very often, but there we are, Jess.
I feel like I've never heard that.
He's done a good job.
Yeah, what's he done good?
Yeah, what's he done, Jim?
Listen, Sunak, as I said, this morning, everybody picks on him. Everybody's picking on him. The debate, it was actually brilliant during the week. And then last night we're watching that question time, and a Labour leader who was on the show still couldn't answer the questions which she was getting asked.
And this is the problem, because what Jeremy, I hear you, Jim. What Jeremy Hunt is saying is the Conservatives will protect ordinary people from damaging tax rates, and they've said how they will do it. And Labour haven't done that. Starmer had 12 occasions in that leadership debate to confront the figure of £2,000, and it's cut through. People are hearing it, whether it's £500 a year, whether it's £2,000 over 4 years. The fact is that it has cut through, and people are hearing that Labour are going to be a tax and spend administration. They keep saying we won't do anything that isn't costed, but they're not saying how they will cost anything. And Starmer is just a spent force. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, I mean, at the last poll I saw said that Labour get more than 400 seats. I mean, it's just incredible. This election is I think, the most interesting since 1979. Thank you, Jim. Thanks for all your calls on this.